I'm Lula, 58 years old, and I've dedicated my entire life to my son Adam after my husband passed away. I worked 3 jobs to provide for him, and seeing him become a successful doctor has been my greatest pride, until that text message that shattered everything between us. I never imagined I'd be uninvited from a family cruise, let alone by my own son. But sometimes the most painful rejection leads to the most liberating decision. If you've ever felt betrayed by family, tell me where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories. After Michael died, when Adam was just 5 years old, I found myself alone with a kindergartner in a mountain of grief. We had no life insurance, just a small savings account that barely covered the funeral expenses. I still remember the night after we buried Michael, sitting at our kitchen table, with bills spread out before me, wondering how I would possibly manage. The next morning, I applied for every job I could find. Within a week, I had secured a position as a hospital receptionist during the day. The pay wasn't enough, so I took an evening waitressing job at the Italian restaurant 6 blocks away. On weekends, I cleaned houses for wealthy families. 3 jobs meant Adam spent a lot of time with my neighbor, Mrs. Finley, who watched him for a fraction of what daycare would have cost. We moved out of our small rental house into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment where Adam slept in the bedroom and I took the pull-out couch. Every night, no matter how exhausted I was, I would sit on the edge of his bed and read him a story. Sometimes I fell asleep mid-sentence, and he would gently wake me. "Mommy, what happens next?" Even at 5, he showed such compassion. Those early years were a blur of exhaustion. I would wake at 5 a.m., prepare Adam's lunch, drop him at Mrs. Finley's by 7 a.m. work at the hospital until 4 p.m., pick him up briefly to help with homework, drop him back with Mrs. Finley, then waitress, until 10 p.m. On weekends, I'd bring him along to the houses I cleaned when I couldn't find childcare. Some kind homeowners would let him watch their TV or play in their yards while I scrubbed their floors. Every penny went to keeping us afloat and saving for Adam's future. I wore the same 3 outfits for years, rotating them, so no one at the hospital would notice. My splurges were Adam's school supplies and occasional educational toys I found at thrift stores. When his school recommended he join the gifted program that required special materials, I picked up extra weekend cleaning jobs without hesitation. On Michael's deathbed, I had made him a promise. "I'll make sure Adam has every opportunity," I had whispered as he squeezed my hand for the last time. Even in those early, difficult years, I never doubted I would keep that promise. Adam showed an interest in science early on. By 3rd grade, he was bringing home perfect report cards and talking about becoming a doctor. I encouraged his dream by bringing home medical pamphlets from the hospital and taking him to free science exhibitions at the local community college. Our Friday night ritual became sacred. No matter what, I would decline Friday evening shifts so we could have dinner together. Over discount pizza or homemade spaghetti, we would talk about our week and dream about the future. "When I'm a doctor, Mom," he would say, "you'll never have to work again." I would smile, not because I expected him to support me, but because I was so proud of his determination. After 7 years of sacrifice and saving, I had finally accumulated enough for a down payment on a small house. Adam was 12 when we moved in. It wasn't fancy, just a modest 3-bedroom in a middle-class neighborhood with decent schools. But it was ours. I can still remember Adam running from room to room, marveling at the space after our years in the apartment. "I have my own room and a study room," he had exclaimed, jumping on his new bed, which was actually a second-hand frame with a new mattress I had saved for months to buy. The pride I felt providing this stability for my son made every double shift worthwhile. I had kept my promise to Michael so far, giving our son a safe home and the opportunity to thrive. The mortgage payments were steep, and I had to keep all 3 jobs. But seeing Adam flourish made it all worthwhile. As Adam entered his teenage years, I continued to work just as hard, now focusing on building his college fund. While other parents complained about their teenagers becoming distant, Adam remained considerate and studious. He understood the sacrifices I was making and responded by excelling in school and helping around the house. Teachers praised not just his academic abilities, but his character. "You've raised a remarkable young man," his high school principal told me at a parent-teacher conference, bringing tears to my eyes. By his senior year, Adam was top of his class, with acceptance letters from several prestigious universities. When he set his sights on pre-med, I knew my financial planning would be tested like never before. But I was ready for the challenge. This house, our stability, the foundation I had built through years of hard work, would support him through the next phase of his journey. The day Adam's acceptance letter to medical school arrived was one of the happiest of my life. I remember the proud tremble in his voice when he called me at work. I asked my supervisor for a 5-minute break and cried tears of joy in the hospital bathroom. My son was going to become a doctor. Michael would have been so proud. The excitement quickly gave way to financial reality. Even with Adam's scholarships and student loans, there would be significant costs. After discussing our options, I made the decision to take a second mortgage on our house. The loan officer warned me about the risks, especially at my age, but I signed the papers without hesitation. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" Adam had asked, concern evident in his eyes. "More sure than I've ever been about anything," I told him. "This house was always for your future." For the next 4 years, I worked overtime whenever it was offered. The hospital had promoted me to administrative supervisor by then, which helped, but I kept my weekend house cleaning jobs to make the additional mortgage payments. Adam would call me between his grueling study sessions, often just to check how I was doing. "Don't worry about me," I always told him. "Just focus on becoming the best doctor you can be." His gratitude during those years warmed my heart. He would send me thoughtful cards on birthdays and Mother's Day, sometimes with small gifts he could afford from his tight student budget. During his rare visits home, he would insist on cooking for me and handling repairs around the house. We remained close, despite the distance, talking at least weekly about his classes, his challenges, and his dreams. When his graduation day finally arrived, I splurged on a new dress, my first in years. Sitting in the audience, watching him walk across the stage in his cap and gown, I couldn't contain my tears. This brilliant, compassionate doctor was my son. All those nights on the pull-out couch, all those double shifts, every sacrifice had led to this moment. It was worth every minute. Adam met Natalie during his residency at a prestigious hospital on the other side of the state. She was a pharmaceutical sales representative who often visited his department. When he first mentioned her, his voice had a lightness I hadn't heard before. "You should see her mom," he said during one of our calls. "She's not just beautiful, she's brilliant, and she makes me laugh." A month later, he asked if he could bring her home for a weekend. I was thrilled and spent days preparing cleaning every corner of our modest house and planning meals I hoped would impress her. When they arrived, Natalie was everything Adam had described, polished and articulate, with an easy confidence. At first, our interactions were pleasant. She complimented my home-cooked meals and asked questions about Adam's childhood. But I noticed small things, tiny warning signs I chose to ignore because Adam seemed so happy. The way she glanced around our house with barely concealed assessment. Her surprise when I mentioned still working weekends. The slight shift in her tone when talking about her own family's lakeside property. "You've done amazingly well as a single mother," she said during that first visit. And while the words were complimentary, something in her delivery suggested surprise, as though she hadn't expected someone of my background to raise someone worthy of her. When I met Natalie's parents at a dinner they hosted, the disparities became clearer. Their sprawling home in an exclusive neighborhood, their casual mentions of country club memberships and European vacations, their subtle questions about my people and background. They were perfectly cordial, but I felt the unspoken evaluation. I was being measured, and in some way, I couldn't articulate, found lacking. Still, when Adam called 6 months later to announce their engagement, my happiness for him was genuine. If Natalie made him happy, then I was grateful to her. When he asked if I would help with wedding planning, I eagerly agreed, envisioning mother-son shopping trips for suits and meaningful conversations about his future. The reality was different. Wedding planning became a series of diminishing roles for me. Initially included in venue visits, I was gradually excluded from decisions. The small church wedding I had imagined became an elaborate country club affair. My suggestions were politely noted, then ignored. When I offered to host a small rehearsal dinner at our house, Natalie quickly interjected that her parents had already arranged for a 5-star restaurant. By the time the wedding day arrived, I felt like a guest rather than the mother of the groom, seated at a table far from the main wedding party, surrounded by distant relatives of Natalie's. I watched my son begin a new life in a world that seemed to have little room for me. The lavish displays of wealth, the casual mentions of the newlyweds' upcoming month-long European honeymoon, the insider jokes about private schools and vacation properties, all highlighted my outsider status. Adam and Natalie purchased a home in an upscale neighborhood with substantial help from her parents. When he gave me a tour, apologizing for the modest starter home that cost 3 times what my house was worth, I saw how much his perspective had shifted. The house I had sacrificed everything for, that he once ran through with excitement, was now something he referred to as quaint and nostalgic. As they settled into married life, I noticed Adam's calls becoming less frequent. Our Friday tradition faded as he explained he and Natalie had standing dinner engagements with friends from their club. When I did speak with him, Natalie was often audible in the background, reminding him of appointments or subtly cutting conversation short. The distance growing between us was geographical, social, and increasingly emotional. With each passing month after the wedding, I felt my son slipping into a world I had helped him reach, but could never enter myself. Over the next 3 years, my relationship with Adam underwent a transformation that broke my heart piece by piece. The weekly calls I cherished became bi-weekly, then monthly. When we did connect, our conversations felt rushed and superficial. Adam spoke about medical conferences in exotic locations, country club memberships, and renovation plans for their modest 5-bedroom home. I tried maintaining our connection, suggesting lunch dates when I knew he'd be near the hospital where I worked. More often than not, these would be canceled last minute with a brief text, "Surgery running long," or "Natalie planned something, forgot to tell me." I learned to hide my disappointment, always responding with understanding. Then came the news that made my heart soar, a brief moment of hope in our increasingly distant relationship. "Mom, we're pregnant," Adam announced during a rare Sunday call. "Actually, it's twins." I cried with joy at becoming a grandmother, immediately offering to help after they were born, to take time off work, anything they needed. When James and Sophia arrived, I rushed to the hospital with handmade blankets I'd spent months crocheting. The delivery room was already filled with Natalie's extended family. Her mother glanced at my handmade gifts and said, "Oh, how sweet. We've already ordered the designer nursery set, but these could work for the downstairs playroom." I swallowed my hurt and focused on my beautiful grandchildren. My excitement about being an involved grandmother quickly met Natalie's carefully constructed barriers. Visits had to be scheduled weeks in advance. When I arrived, Natalie would often mention that the babies were overtired or that they had just implemented a new routine that my visit might disrupt. Adam would look apologetic, but rarely intervened. "You'll need to use hand sanitizer before holding them," Natalie instructed during one visit, watching me as if I might contaminate her children despite my decades working in a hospital environment. "And please, don't bring stuffed animals from your house anymore. We're trying to maintain an organic environment." On my 56th birthday, Adam surprised me by bringing the family for dinner. I spent days cleaning the house, cooking Adam's childhood favorites, setting up a small play area for the twins. They arrived an hour late. Natalie immediately placed plastic covers on my couch before sitting down and declined the meal I'd prepared, explaining she was now gluten-free and sugar-free. They left after barely an hour, Natalie citing the twins' bedtime routine. As they gathered their things, I overheard Natalie whisper to Adam, "I don't know why we keep coming to this tiny house. It smells like old carpet, and the neighborhood isn't safe for the kids." Adam's expression shifted almost imperceptibly as he absorbed her words, and I saw him looking around my home with new eyes, no longer seeing the sanctuary I had created for him, but judging it by Natalie's standards. It was the first time I truly realized how much his values had changed. When the twins turned 2, I received a text invitation to their birthday celebration at Natalie's parents' country club. I bought special outfits I could barely afford and age-appropriate educational toys recommended by the bookstore clerk. At the party, I found myself seated at the extended family table near the kitchen, far from Adam and the children. My gifts were added to an enormous pile, opened later without acknowledgement. When I tried to take photos with my grandchildren, Natalie intervened. "The professional photographer will handle family pictures later." I wasn't called for those photos. Most painful was Adam's behavior. He circulated among Natalie's family and their social circle, laughing, and engaged occasionally, glancing my way with a brief smile, but never coming over. The little boy, who once held my hand proudly everywhere we went, now seemed embarrassed by my presence. I left early, using work as an excuse. Though it was my day off, Adam barely noticed my departure. Mother's Day passed without acknowledgement, 2 years in a row. When I gently mentioned it during a phone call, Adam sounded genuinely shocked. "I'm so sorry, Mom. Things have been crazy busy with the practice and the kids." The second year, his excuse was identical, as if reading from the same script, making it clear my special day wasn't important enough to remember. I attempted several times to address the growing distance, choosing my words carefully. "I miss our talks, Adam. I'd love to be more involved in your lives and the children's." His responses were always deflections. "We're just in a busy season right now." Or, "You wouldn't believe how hectic things are with the twins' activities." Never acknowledging the real issue, never making concrete plans to improve things. Holiday gatherings became exercises in loneliness within a crowd. Invitations to Natalie's family events came with unspoken rules. I was expected to bring an expensive dish, but not mention my simple recipes. I should dress nicely, but not outshine anyone. I could hold my grandchildren briefly, but defer to Natalie's parents for meaningful interactions. Throughout these gatherings, I often found myself standing alone, watching my son fully embedded in a family that wasn't mine. All the while, I continued making payments on our house, the house I bought for Adam's security and future. Sometimes, standing in his old bedroom, now my home office, I would remember the boy who once couldn't believe he had his own study space, who sat at the kitchen table working on science projects, who dreamed of becoming a doctor, while I worked 3 jobs to make it possible. I wondered if he remembered too. Last spring, Adam surprised me with a dinner invitation. "Natalie's parents want the whole family to get together Friday night," he said. "They have something special to announce." It was the first Friday night dinner invitation I'd received in over a year. I immediately requested time off work and spent hours choosing an appropriate outfit. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant I could never afford on my own. Natalie's parents, Robert and Judith, presided at the head of the table, with Adam, Natalie, and the twins seated closest to them. I was placed at the far end, beside Natalie's cousin, whom I'd met only once before. After the appetizers were served, Robert stood and tapped his glass. "Judith and I have been planning this for months, and we're finally ready to share the exciting news." He paused dramatically. "We're taking the entire family on a Mediterranean cruise this summer. 2 weeks of luxury on the water, visiting Italy, Greece, and Spain." The table erupted in excitement. Natalie clapped her hands while the twins, now 5, bounced in their seats. Adam looked genuinely surprised and pleased. Across the table, Natalie's siblings and their spouses began discussing shore excursions and formal night outfits. I sat quietly processing the news until Adam caught my eye and smiled. "What do you think, Mom? Have you ever been on a cruise?" Before I could answer, Judith chimed in. "Of course she hasn't, dear." Turning to me with a patronizing smile, she added, "You're going to love it, Lula. The ship has everything: multiple pools, gourmet restaurants, daily activities. It's perfect for first-timers." For the first time in years, I felt included in a family plan. My heart swelled with the possibility of spending quality time with Adam and my grandchildren. I imagined breakfast with the twins, watching sunset on deck, with Adam creating memories to bridge the distance that had grown between us. "This sounds wonderful," I said sincerely. "Thank you for including me." The conversation flowed to cabin arrangements. Judith had printed deck plans of the ship and was assigning rooms. Robert and I have the grand suite, of course. Adam and Natalie, you'll have the family suite with the connecting room for the twins. Sarah and David, you'll be in the deluxe ocean view on deck 8. As she continued down her list, I noticed she hadn't mentioned my accommodation. Eventually, Natalie's brother asked, "Where will Lula be staying?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Judith looked at Robert. Robert looked at Natalie. Natalie looked at Adam. Adam studied his plate, intently avoiding my eyes. Finally, Judith said carefully, "Well, we thought, since this is primarily a family trip." Her voice trailed off. Adam still wouldn't look at me, and in that moment, I understood. Despite the earlier conversation, I wasn't actually invited. The remainder of the dinner passed in a blur. I maintained my composure, smiling and nodding at appropriate moments, while feeling increasingly invisible. No one directly addressed the cabin question again. When dessert arrived, conversation had moved on to passport requirements and shore excursions. As we left the restaurant, I gently touched Adam's arm. "Will you call me tomorrow? I'd like to discuss the cruise details." He nodded vaguely. "Sure, Mom. It's been a busy week, but I'll try." A week passed without a word from Adam. I tried calling twice, but my calls went to voicemail. I sent a text asking about cruise details and received no response. The silence was deafening and confusing. Had I misunderstood the invitation? Was there a problem with the booking? Then, on a Sunday morning, as I was preparing for work, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from Adam, and the words froze me in place. "Mom, we've been thinking about the cruise arrangements. It's really a trip for Natalie's side of the family. You're not coming on the cruise. You're not our family." I read the message repeatedly, certain I had misunderstood. The last sentence burned into my vision. "You're not our family." 4 words that negated a lifetime of sacrifice and love. 4 words from the son I had raised alone, worked 3 jobs, mortgaged my future for. I called Adam immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. I called again and again. Nothing. I sent a text asking for clarification, for a conversation, for anything other than this cruel dismissal. Hours later, a text came through, not from Adam, but from Natalie. "Adam and I feel it's best if the cruise remains for blood relatives only. The kids get overwhelmed with too many people. I'm sure you understand. Maybe we can arrange a day trip to the park when we return." Blood relatives. As if the 28 years I spent raising Adam single-handedly, the thousands of meals I cooked homework, I helped with tears, I wiped away nightmares, I soothed, meant nothing without a genetic connection. As if Natalie's parents, who had known the twins only as long as she had, somehow had more right to their time than I did. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced through the house. I had sacrificed everything to keep the house I had maintained for Adam's sake, long after I could have downsized. Every room held memories of our life together, of the boy who once called me his best friend in the whole world, who made Mother's Day cards promising to take care of me when I was old, who had now declared I wasn't family. In the stillness of that sleepless night, surrounded by the physical manifestation of my lifelong sacrifice, I finally confronted a painful truth. I had built my entire existence around someone who now saw me as an outsider. I had denied myself comfort, relationships, even basic necessities, all to secure Adam's future. And now, that future had no place for me. The morning after receiving that devastating text, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. I sat at my kitchen table, still in my pajamas, at noon, staring blankly at the wall. The house felt oppressively silent. When my doorbell rang, I almost didn't answer, but after the 3rd insistent ring, I dragged myself to the door. My best friend Donna stood on the porch, grocery bag in hand. "You didn't respond to my texts, and you never miss work." "I was worried," she said, taking in my disheveled appearance. "What happened?" I wordlessly handed her my phone with Adam's text still open. She read it, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to anger. "That ungrateful little... After everything you've done for him..." The dam broke. I collapsed into tears as Donna guided me to the couch, holding me, while I sobbed out the whole story of the cruise, the years of increasing distance, the painful realization that my son no longer considered me family. When my tears finally subsided, Donna asked pointedly, "Why are you still in this house, Lula?" "What do you mean? This 3-bedroom house. It's just you here now. You bought it for Adam, kept it for Adam, but he's made it clear he doesn't appreciate what you've sacrificed. Why are you still paying for it?" Her question hit me like a physical blow. I had never considered selling. This house represented stability, the foundation I had worked so hard to provide for my son. But Donna was right. I was still making substantial mortgage payments on a house chosen for a family, maintained for future generations, who apparently wouldn't include me. "I don't know," I whispered. "I guess I never thought about it as a choice. It's just what mothers do." Donna shook her head firmly. "No, it's what you do. You've spent your entire adult life living for Adam, not for yourself. And look how he's repaying that devotion." That afternoon, we pulled out all my financial paperwork. I had been making payments on the house for over 25 years. Between the down payment I had scraped together and the equity built over decades, I had a substantial asset, despite the second mortgage, for Adam's medical school. "You know," Donna said carefully, "real estate in this area has tripled in value since you bought this place. There's a new shopping center and medical complex nearby. This house is probably worth much more than you realize." Something shifted inside me as I stared at the numbers. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a radical thought. What if I lived for me instead of for Adam? What if I took this asset I had built through decades of sacrifice and used it to secure my own happiness? The next morning, I called a real estate agent. Carol arrived that afternoon, professional and direct. She walked through my house with a critical eye, noting updates needed, but also emphasizing the property's strong points: the location, the lot size, the school district. "Based on recent comparables," she said, "I would list this at $425,000. You could likely get multiple offers within days in this market." The figure stunned me. I had purchased the house for $142,000 25 years earlier. Even accounting for the remaining mortgage balance, I was looking at a substantial sum. For the first time, I saw my house not as Adam's inheritance, but as my retirement fund. I spent the next week in a flurry of research and appointments. I met with a financial advisor who helped me understand my options for investing the proceeds from a sale. I researched smaller properties, eventually visiting a beachfront retirement community I had driven past wistfully for years. The condos there were modern, maintenance-free, and surrounded by amenities I had denied myself for decades. In the midst of this exploration, Adam called, not to apologize for his text or explain the cruise situation, but to ask if he could borrow my camping equipment for a weekend trip with the twins. "Of course," I said, calmly, giving no indication of my plans. "When would you like to pick it up?" "I'll send Natalie over tomorrow," he replied casually. "I've got a busy schedule at the hospital." I thought about confronting him then, about asking how he could text me that I wasn't family one day and ask for favors the next. But something stopped me. A new sense of calm had settled over me, a certainty about my path forward that didn't require his validation or even his awareness. The following week, I made an offer on a 2-bedroom condo in the beachfront community. The balcony overlooked the ocean, and the complex had a pool fitness center and social activities I had never had time for while working multiple jobs. The monthly fees were less than my current mortgage payment, and the purchase price would leave me with substantial savings to invest. With my offer accepted, I officially listed my house. As Carol predicted, I received multiple offers within days, several above asking price. I accepted an all-cash offer with a quick closing date, specifically choosing a timeline that would finalize while Adam and his family were away on their cruise. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of sorting through 3 decades of possessions. I donated furniture I wouldn't need in my smaller space, keeping only pieces with sentimental value. I boxed photos and keepsakes, including Adam's childhood art and awards I had proudly displayed for years. I didn't contact him about these items, sensing he wouldn't be interested in what he'd consider remnants of his humble beginnings. As the closing date approached, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for what had been lost with Adam, grief for the relationship I had imagined having with my grandchildren, but also a growing excitement about my new life. For the first time in 30 years, I was making a decision based solely on what I wanted, not what would benefit my son. The freedom was both terrifying and exhilarating. 2 days before closing, I received a surprising text from Natalie. "The cruise is wonderful. The kids are having a magical time with my parents. So glad we kept this special time just for real family." Attached was a photo of the twins with Natalie's parents on the ship's deck. The deliberate cruelty of the message confirmed I was making the right decision. The day before closing, I was packing the last of my kitchen items when I heard a car door slam outside. Looking out the window, I saw Adam stalking up my walkway, his face contorted with anger. Confused, I opened the door before he could knock. "What is this?" he demanded, pointing at the sold sign in my front yard. "Why is there a sold sign at my house?" His words, the automatic claiming of my home as his, crystallized everything that had gone wrong in our relationship. I stood straighter, suddenly calm in the face of his fury. "It's not your house, Adam. It's mine. And yes, I've sold it." Adam pushed past me into the living room, spinning around to take in the boxes and bare walls. "You can't do this. This is our family home. Our family." I repeated, my voice steady. "According to your text, I'm not family. Your exact words were, 'You're not coming on the cruise. You're not our family.' Remember sending that?" His face flushed. "That was just about the cruise. Natalie's parents were paying, and they wanted it to be just their family. You know how they are. And you know how I am, Adam. I'm the mother who worked 3 jobs so you wouldn't go hungry after your father died. I'm the mother who lived on a pull-out couch for 7 years so you could have the bedroom. I'm the mother who took a second mortgage on this house to pay for your medical school." "That's not fair," he protested, but with less conviction. "You know how grateful I am for all that." "Am I supposed to feel your gratitude? Because what I feel is your absence, your judgment, your embarrassment about where you came from." As if on cue, another car pulled into the driveway. Natalie emerged looking confused and irritated. "Adam, why did you rush off like that? The kids are waiting at my mother's for lunch." She spotted me in the doorway, and her expression hardened. "What's going on?" Adam gestured wildly at the house. "She's selling our house without even telling us." Natalie looked at the sold sign, then at me, her eyes narrowing. "You can't just sell it. What about the twins' inheritance?" The audacity of her question left me momentarily speechless. When I found my voice, it was calm, but firm. "This house has never been the twins' inheritance. It's the result of my 30 years of hard work and sacrifice. I've been making the payments alone since before you met Adam." "But we always assumed," Adam began. "You assumed I would keep paying for and maintaining a house I don't need, so you could eventually have it, despite treating me like an unwelcome outsider for years." I pulled out my phone and showed him his own text message. "If I'm not family, Adam, then this isn't your family home. Adam's face contorted, shifting between anger and a dawning realization. Where will we gather for holidays? Where will the kids visit their grandmother? The question was so disconnected from reality that I almost laughed. Adam, we haven't spent a holiday together in 3 years. You always go to Natalie's family, and the twins visit me only when Natalie schedules it, which has been twice in the last year. That's because your house isn't child-friendly, Natalie interjected, and this neighborhood isn't as safe as ours. This neighborhood, I said quietly, is where I raised a child alone and kept him safe for 18 years. This unfriendly house is where I created a home from nothing but love and determination. Adam's anger surged again. If you sell this house, if you throw away our family history, like this, don't expect to be part of our lives going forward. This is selfish, Mom. Typical selfish behavior. The words were meant to wound, to leverage my deepest fear of losing connection with my son and grandchildren. But instead, they clarified everything. In Adam's view, my only acceptable role was to provide for him while expecting nothing in return, to give endlessly without reciprocation. I've already been cut out of your lives, Adam, I said softly. This house is the last thing connecting us, and it's a false connection. You don't want me, you want what I can give you. Adam stormed out without another word, Natalie close behind him. As their car pulled away, I stood in the doorway of my soon-to-be former home and felt a weight lifting. The confrontation had been painful, but clarifying. I was breaking free, not just from a house, but from a pattern of one-sided sacrifice that had defined my adult life. The next day, I signed the closing papers with a mixture of sadness and determination. As I handed over the keys that had represented security and sacrifice for so long, I felt I was also releasing years of unmet expectations and unreciprocated love. I was not abandoning my son, as he had accused. I was finally honoring myself. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my beachfront condo, watching waves crash against the shore as the sun rose over the ocean. My new life had taken shape in ways I never imagined possible. The spacious 2-bedroom condo was decorated entirely to my taste, with comfortable furniture, artwork I had always admired, but never felt justified in purchasing, and large windows that filled every room with natural light. My morning routine had transformed. Instead of rushing to work after hurried preparation, I now began each day with a walk along the beach, followed by coffee on my balcony. I had reduced my hospital hours to part-time, using some of the house proceeds to supplement my income. For the first time in decades, I had time to read for pleasure, to take yoga classes at the community center, to simply exist without constant worry about bills and obligations. The retirement community had welcomed me warmly. My neighbor Martha, a retired teacher, had become a close friend, introducing me to the book club and volunteer committee. Thomas, from 2 floors down, taught a painting class I joined despite having no artistic experience. Jessica and Paul, a couple in their 60s who lived in the building next door, often invited me to join them for dinner or community events. 3 months after moving in, I started a support group for parents healing from family estrangement. Our weekly meetings in the community room quickly grew from 3 participants to 15 each, with their own story of sacrifice and rejection. Facilitating these discussions gave purpose to my pain, transforming my personal heartbreak into wisdom that could help others. Following my financial advisor's guidance, I had invested most of the house proceeds for long-term security. With a portion of the remaining funds, I had booked a solo world cruise, departing in the fall, a 14-day journey to destinations I had only dreamed about while working 3 jobs and raising Adam. The trip represented everything I had denied myself, a declaration that my life would no longer be defined by what I gave to others, but by what I allowed myself to experience. Adam had not contacted me since the day of our confrontation. I had sent birthday cards and small gifts to the twins, addressed directly to them at Adam's house, but received no acknowledgement. For Thanksgiving and Christmas, I had mailed them cards with photos of me at the beach, keeping my messages light and loving, never mentioning the conflict with their parents. These gestures went unanswered as well. The holidays which I had feared would be unbearably lonely became unexpected celebrations of independence. Martha invited me to Thanksgiving dinner with her extended family, who treated me like a longtime friend. For Christmas, our community organized a potluck and gift exchange, where I laughed more than I had in years. The absence of tension and pretense that had characterized holidays with Natalie's family made these gatherings genuinely joyful, rather than exercises in endurance. Almost exactly a year after selling my house, I was selecting produce at a grocery store when I heard a familiar voice. "Mom." I turned to find Adam standing there, looking somehow smaller than I remembered. Gone was the confident, borderline, arrogant demeanor. His expression was uncertain, almost tentative. "Hello, Adam," I said, surprised at how calm I felt seeing him. "How are you?" "I'm managing," he replied, shifting uncomfortably. "You look different. Good different. Happy." "I am happy," I confirmed, and realized with slight surprise that it was entirely true. We stood in awkward silence before he asked, "How's your new place?" "It's wonderful. Right on the beach. I have a spare bedroom for guests and a community of friends just outside my door." I didn't mention that the guest room remained unused by my grandchildren. He nodded, glancing around, as if seeking an escape route. "We, actually had to downsize recently. The market turned, and the practice had some setbacks. We couldn't find anything like—" He trailed off, but I knew he meant like the house I had sold, the stability I had provided that he had taken for granted. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "Change can be difficult." "The twins ask about you," he admitted reluctantly. "They saw a photo of your beach place, the one you sent at Christmas. Sophia calls it Grandma's Beach House and keeps asking when they can visit." The mention of my grandchildren pierced my carefully constructed composure. "They're welcome any time," I said softly. "You have my address." Adam looked down at his shopping cart. "Natalie's parents have been having health issues. Her dad had a stroke last month. It's been eye-opening seeing how quickly things can change." I waited, sensing there was more he wanted to say. Finally, he met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom, for the text about the cruise, for how things have been these past few years. I got caught up in Natalie's world, in trying to belong to her family, and I lost sight of mine, of you, of everything you sacrificed for me." The apology was unexpected, but not unwelcome. It didn't erase the pain of the past years, but it acknowledged it, which was a beginning. "Thank you for saying that, Adam. It means a lot to hear." "Could we maybe start over?" he asked hesitantly. "Maybe the twins could visit your beach house sometime, without us, just them and their grandmother." I considered his offer carefully. The old me would have jumped at any chance to reconnect, accepting whatever terms were offered. But the woman I had become valued herself too much for that. "I'd love to have the twins visit," I said. But Adam starting over doesn't mean forgetting what happened. I can forgive, but I need to know you understand why your actions hurt so deeply. He nodded slowly. I do understand. At least, I'm beginning to. When Natalie's dad got sick, and I saw how devastated she was, I thought about you raising me alone after Dad died. About how you never complained, never made me feel like a burden. About how I've treated you like an obligation rather than the amazing mother you are. His words soothed a wound that had been open for too long. Not completely healing it, but beginning the process. We agreed to take small steps. I would have the twins for a weekend the following month. Adam and I would meet for lunch occasionally, just the two of us, to rebuild our relationship on new, more equal terms. As I walked back to my condo, after our encounter grocery bags in hand, I reflected on the strange path that had led me here. The cruel text message that had shattered me had also freed me. The house I had sacrificed everything to keep had in the end become the key to my independence. The deepest lesson I had learned was not about Adam or our relationship, but about myself. True family is built on respect and mutual care, not obligation or blood ties alone. Self-sacrifice is meaningful only when it's recognized and reciprocated. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to break the cycle of one-sided giving. Now, watching the sunset from my balcony, I felt a peace I had never known during my years of exhausting sacrifice. I had found freedom not by receiving more from others, but by releasing the expectation that my worth was tied to what I could provide. In finally valuing myself as much as I had valued my son, I had created space for a relationship that might one day be balanced and genuine, rather than defined by obligation and expectation. If my story resonates with you, I hope it gives you courage to examine your own relationships. Are you giving without receiving? Are you valued for who you are, not just what you provide? Remember that sometimes the hardest but most necessary act of love is establishing boundaries that honor your worth. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found meaning in my journey, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for being part of my healing process, and I wish you the strength to create the life you deserve, whatever that looks like for you.